At Yuba Feather School, writing is much more than a Monday-Wednesday activity. It's a skill that is developed step by step over an extended period of time. This program will demonstrate several methods used by the faculty of Yuba Feather School to teach the writing process.
Could be worse.
Could be worse. Boy, they got back at Grandpa, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to write a book like that today.
We are?
We sure are.
Finish that one.
The Yuba Feather program separates writing into formal and informal dimensions. Informal writing is personal writing. Emphasis is placed upon the expression of thoughts, ideas, and feelings. Its purpose is to build fluency, the flow of thoughts into words. This type of writing is usually intended to be read only by students themselves. Informal writing is introduced in kindergarten. Children must first talk and hear others speak before they can express themselves in writing. An environment rich with language where children listen to literature and poetry and participate in rhyme and rhythm is conducive to building language fluency.
Squirrel, he's a funny little thing, carries a bushy tail.
Through experiences like these, children learn that words are like playthings, building blocks that can be used to shape ideas. Small children love to tell stories or describe events. Dictation enables them to see their words written down. In the primary grades, writing grows from art.
His guitars on the tree and made his circle on the bedroom floor. He is throwing mud and eggs at the window.
Art is a concrete form of expression. The children come to the paper with their own thoughts and their own feelings and are able to freely put these on their paper. And then it's just a natural progression into writing.
We do as many activities as we possibly can and the greatest variety that we can. Like we have cooking and film and art, and we work with wood and we work with clay, and we do a lot of art so the children can bring themselves to the experience. And even if they can't write the words themselves, they can tell you about the subject that you're dealing with.
As students gain fluency, teachers continue to blend oral language into the writing experience. Most students keep a daily journal. Teachers check to make sure the required amount of writing is completed, but read the journals only if requested to by the students. Learning logs incorporate writing into other subject areas. This tool reinforces what a child has learned in a subject while providing practice in writing. Joe Palmer modifies the learning log concept by adding techniques of observation.
For instance, a student might sit down by a creek, and the first thing that will happen is they'll focus first on the creek, the noises of the creek, then they'll start to drift into the other things that are going on. And as they become aware of more of the environment around them, they spend more time writing, and when they come back to the class, they have a lot more to evaluate, a lot more to think about.
And teachers provide an environment rich in informal writing, constantly encouraging the expression of ideas. They pave the way for the formal writing process. The kinds of activities you've seen are just a few examples of ideas used to encourage informal writing. Formal writing is public writing. The outcome of formal writing is a polished, finished product.
It stopped for a second, then it came back on and said, "A killer bear is on the loose. Lock your doors." I just thought they were teasing, so I went outside to play.
Whether it is displayed on a bulletin board, sent to a newspaper, or made into a book, the final product of formal writing is one that is shared. The purpose of formal writing is to inform, persuade, or entertain. The form of the writing is also an important element to consider. Essays, reports, books, and scripts are just some of the ways formal writing can be expressed. The formal writing process emphasizes a variety of step-by-step procedures which can be modified to fit the needs and abilities of each class. These steps are the pre-writing stage is similar to informal writing. It is used as a catalyst to spark ideas. It helps set the stage for writing that will follow. The type of activity chosen is limited only by the teacher's imagination. Motivation is a key element in preparing students to write.
I want you to write a story about the life and times of that peanut. I want you to describe its personality. I want you to describe its habits, its background, its family, what it does for a living if it works, how it keeps busy. And here's the thing, I want that all to relate to what that peanut looks like.
Description too, he went on. I like to know what color a thing is, how it smells, and maybe how it looks. And maybe how a guy feels about it, but not too much of that. I get to bring in books that I've read or stories that I've read that I'm excited about and share those with my students. And I sense them picking up on my excitement, and then it starts to come back to me because they learn from hearing or reading these authors. The students learn to write using a similar approach, using the same kind of texture, the same kind of description.
In formal writing, playing with language leads to sentences and paragraphs. In working with children who are intimidated by writing, Janice Abel finds that using patterns provides a safe environment.
I'm going to write a book like that today.
We'll have a display that shows your retrieval chart.
As Kay Heath points out, helping children organize ideas is vital to the learning process.
In the content areas, I think that the main thing you're concerned about is organization of ideas and thoughts. And helping the kids organize before they start to write is a really important part of the content areas. If you can keep a chart or make a map or a cluster of the concepts that develop through their reading or their research, then they have something to look at as they start to write. And that can be done as a whole group, or it can be done with individual students doing the research.
Turns around.
Okay, great idea. Revolving bookcase?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mapping or clustering can be an effective and a graphic way to organize concepts. Many educational researchers feel that mapping enables students to utilize both right and left brain activity, combining reasoning with visual patterning. Don Linebarger explains the process.
If this were like a sample cluster, it doesn't have any words on it, but if it were a sample, the next step would be for them to figure out what they wanted to use and go through a number the parts of the cluster as a way of sequencing or ordering their thoughts in the same way that they would like it to appear on their paper. And then the third step is to go ahead and line it out and then write a topic sentence or a telling sentence from the main thought right on these lines, for instance, and then go ahead and create a sentence or sentences for every part of the cluster. And I think by the time they finish that part, they've pretty well got a rough draft, and all they have to do is transpose from the line to their paper.
Whatever the activity or experience, its purpose is designed to generate and organize ideas.
Can you pretend you are that ant?
When the pre-writing activity is completed, the teacher and students should review the stage-setting elements, the purpose for the writing, the form it will take, and the intended audience should be clarified. The rough draft should be regarded as a working sketch, a time to develop ideas and experiment. It is often the most difficult stage in the writing process. Since revision is anticipated at the outset, children are asked to write on every other line to make room for future changes. The purpose of the response stage is to get the writer to examine how effectively his or her ideas are being communicated. The goal is to have students respond to each other's writing. At the primary level, the teacher models positive responses to a child's writing.
Can somebody pick me out of the story someplace here a good descriptive word that Summer used? Leanne.
In the intermediate grades, the teacher works with a group of children and responds to each child's work. Children are encouraged to make comments on each other's writing. As students progress, they work in small response groups and critically examine the work. Responding is positive and supportive. Students identify what is especially good about the writing. They point out what is unclear. They may suggest a better way to organize the information. Teachers are role models for the responding process.
What do you think about Mac?
Well, yeah, he's kind of has a kind of a critic attitude and acts like he wants to be.
There's a lot of teaching that's involved here, trying to show the students how to be positive and how to give helpful suggestions without bruising egos to their partners or to the other members in their group.
During the responding process, students began to look at their drafts with a new eye. With these new suggestions in mind, they start revising, improving their written communication. Revisions grow from responses to the writing.
And one of the changes that I tell the kids is a sign that you've done a really good job of changing is when your final draft is shorter than your first draft, because it means you've gotten more concise and you really stuck to the point and you've used better words very often.
There are several techniques which can help students re-see ideas. One is to rework ideas from their brainstorming or mapping diagrams. Another is to change point of view or reorganize the sequence of events.
Can you pretend you are that ant? Try to imagine how you felt and how you felt as an ant.
The computer helps simplify the revising process. Younger children can work on a group story with an aid. Older children who have developed some keyboard skills can begin simple word processing on their own. Concerns with grammar and punctuation are reserved for the next stage of the process, editing. Editing comes only after the content is well developed. Correction symbols are used by some classes to streamline this process. The editor writes the appropriate symbol in the margin rather than identifying the error. In this way, the burden is on the writer to pinpoint the error and correct it. Students in Brent Fox's class use a grammar handbook.
If I see a weakness in a particular student's writing, I will refer him to a certain section in that handbook. And there's all kinds of illustrations, example sentences that go with the rules. If I see a weakness in the class in general, then I will do a specific lesson, I call it a speed sheet, on that particular grammar rule to help them be aware of what they need to improve in their general writing. And then we use that handbook all the time in writing the first draft or in responding or editing of that first draft.
Primary students learn to edit gradually. As they become more proficient writers, students are asked to find the error and tell the teacher how to fix it. By the time a student's work reaches the teacher's desk, it has already been evaluated several times. Other people have made comments, asked questions, and proofread the writing. This makes evaluation for grading purposes easier. Evaluation is designed to help the student measure his or her own progress. A folder which contains all work completed during the year is a graphic way for children to demonstrate their accomplishments. Interviews are a time to review the child's overall effectiveness in communicating ideas. It is also a time to focus on one or two of the student's specific needs. This approach gives the student plenty of chances to correct mistakes on their own, rather than having the teacher do it for them. The student comes to see written communication as the primary goal. The grade becomes secondary. In this way, the student can concentrate on improving writing skills without becoming frustrated. A key element in the writing process is that writing has a purpose. It is leading somewhere.
The students will try to read their own writing, and today a student was going, "The gorilla did it," and they were going, "I can read that." And it just gives them confidence to feel like, yes, I can read that. Yes, I am a learner. Yes, I am writing. Yes, I am reading. And if they have confidence, they'll try and they'll take risk.
A student's writing is valued and used by others.
We use the tape recorder in our classroom, and we tape the books that we write, so the children will have an opportunity throughout the year to go back to the different books that they've written and to use them over and over again. So they're not written and just set on the shelf. They're on display. The parents come, and the parents, volunteers, are asked to read the books to the children. The children always go to the books. They take them out, they look for their own page, they look for the teacher's page in the book, they find their friends' pages. If they can't read the book, they like to listen to the tape. They can be put in the library, read to other classes.
In Janice Abel's class, the post-writing experience includes writing to a favorite author and sending him one of their own books.
All they did was send the letter to him and tell, or the book to them, and tell them how much they enjoyed his book. But that was neat. It was a neat experience. Mercer Mayer is their favorite.
As we've seen, writing for a special purpose is more meaningful than a mere assignment. Even in kindergarten, children can become authors and share their work with classmates. Enthusiasm and a positive attitude are key ingredients in the writing process. Teachers are models for children, sharing their favorite authors as well as their own work. Children are continually given positive reinforcement, leading them to feel good about themselves and their writing ability. Paramount to the writing process is the emphasis on fluency and creative expression of ideas. The mechanics of writing are introduced gradually. As elements of grammar and punctuation are presented, teachers concentrate on one area at a time. In this manner, children come to understand the need for following the conventions of language. It helps them communicate their ideas clearly. Teachers at Yuba Feather School are pleased with the outcome of their writing program. Students progress farther and faster than ever before. Using the step-by-step process described in this tape, students have become enthusiastic writers. They have gained new confidence in their writing skills.
Our goal, one might say, for all the students at our school is that they become Ernest Hemingways or Pearl Bucks. We know that's unrealistic, but we feel it important that we have that kind of expectation of the students. So as students start out at the kindergarten level, they're beginning to experience with developing ideas and putting those ideas down on paper. By the time a student gets to the 8th grade at our school, we expect them to be able to express themselves very thoroughly on paper with nearly any topic that's given to them.
This program shows how a school-wide writing project is being implemented at Yuba Feather School in Challenge, California. In the spring of 1983, teachers met to discuss ideas for new curriculum projects and decided to try a school-wide writing improvement program. The first step was to conduct a needs assessment using the Handbook for Planning an Effective Writing Program from the Department of Education. As Peter Pillsbury, school principal, points out, the assessment had some pretty surprising results.
One of the comments that was made when we finished the assessment was that most everyone on our staff felt that they were pretty hotshot writing teachers. But when we got through doing the assessment, they realized that maybe they weren't quite so hot in the teaching of writing.
With that realization, the teachers began to research ways to improve. This meant extensive reading and visits to other schools using the process. The entire staff met to establish goals, to develop a timeline, and to brainstorm ideas. From the beginning, they've kept the project framework open and flexible.
But we recognize the uniqueness of each teacher and simply ask in our planning for the entire year that each teacher go through the formal writing process at least once during the quarter. But we recognize that what the kindergarten teacher or the first grade teacher is doing in the formal writing process is going to be very different than what the 7th or 8th grade teacher is doing because of the developmental level of the students.
Teachers set goals for their classes. Often the standards are very high.
My goal in writing for this particular class by the end of the year is to have them write paragraphs and to have them make the paragraphs make sense, have a beginning and a middle and an end. And I tell them this all the time, and they're excited about getting to that point. They know that right now they're writing 1 or 2 sentences on their own, and yet they know by the end of the year they're going to be like the big kids and be able to write long stories and have them make sense.
The elements of the writing process were introduced gradually. Throughout the process, the school administrator and the resource teacher gave in-service training sessions and provided support and encouragement for growth and change. Many techniques were used as the faculty began to really open themselves to the process. A key ingredient in implementing the writing program has been modeling. Teachers have used it to show each other how the process works and to demonstrate the process for their students. Teachers model by showing the students that they are writers. They share examples of their favorite authors' works and discuss their merits. They also model the various stages of the writing process they expect the students to use.
To move from the oral language experience to the written language experience, you have to do a lot of modeling with the children on the chalkboard, or however each individual teacher wants to do it. You work together as a group, and you make a sentence up about a subject, and you write it together, you sound it out together, they write it while you're writing it, and eventually they'll start going on their own.
It may appear that implementing the process was easy. It wasn't. The faculty experienced their share of problems.
Initially, as we got into the project, we would find that there wasn't a great deal of change between the first draft and the second draft after the first draft was responded to. But as it went along, that began to change, and now we see a tremendous difference between a first draft and a second draft. Another problem that we encountered was that we thought all you had to do was start following the techniques of the writing process and everything would fall into place. But that wasn't the case. It requires a lot of teaching skill to prepare students to be able to do things like work in a response group or work in an editing group and edit another student's paper. So the teachers had to learn how to teach students the skills that would make them successful in these elements of the writing process. And a lot of time in the classroom is spent on the teachers preparing the kids to be successful responders or successful editors.
Nice. I really like it.
Beautiful.
Teachers discovered when the environment of the classroom is positive and accepting, students are more willing to take risks. By making expectations clear and implementing the process gradually, teachers bring students to experience success. Just as students are taught to delight in their progress as writers, their teachers can use student work to spot areas of need. When a student needs to use a new element of grammar, the teacher can seize the teachable moment. Evaluation is both an ongoing as well as a yearly process. The staff uses the needs assessment instruments again at the end of each school year to measure progress made school-wide in implementing the writing process. Students are evaluated in writing by the use of standardized tests and by the writing they do from September through June. This provides the administrator with priorities of need for the next year. The most important lesson learned at Yuba Feather is that the writing process is an ongoing one. You don't drop it for the next attractive curriculum project that comes along. You use it as a focus for change in other areas. The Yuba Feather teachers learn that there are differences in approach for primary, intermediate, and secondary students. The steps in the process overlap much more for primary students than for intermediate and secondary students. From about third grade on, students become increasingly responsible for more of the steps in the process. They become responders and editors. They work in teams. The process becomes their personal writing tool. Teachers at Yuba Feather have learned that grade level is an artificial category when students write. A second grader can use and understand editing symbols as easily as an eighth grader. Teachers have learned that informal writing can play a critical role in a student's development, as Chuck Aswell points out.
Too much pressure caused by the evaluation of the writing activities could cause the kids to freeze up, and that could affect them for the rest of their lives when it comes to writing fluency. I think that informal writing should be taught at the highest levels of education, all the way through.
If you're a teacher interested in implementing the writing process, the faculty of Yuba Feather School would like to encourage you to try it. Work together as a group. It will increase your learning and enhance your communication in other areas as well. Take classes at a Writers Project Center near you. They're very helpful in learning the elements of the writing process. Above all, explore. Take risks. Keep an open mind, and you will learn and grow as a teacher of writing.